Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching once a week. This is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it. Please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get notified when I upload a new episode. This episode, I'm going to recap the last episode of The Traitors, Season 3, and then I'm going to talk about Yellowjackets, Season 3, Episode 3 for a little bit. And if I have some time at the end, I might rant a little bit about the Bachelor episode that aired on Monday. I'm recording this Tuesday, the 25th of February. I anticipate it going out like sometime tomorrow. I do want to apologize because I said in my last podcast that I would have this episode out by the end of the weekend. That didn't end up happening because I work weekends and I really was like, I can manage fine recording and editing a podcast episode after work if I spread it out over a few days. And I just I ended up not being able to focus on, I just couldn't get it done because of the fact that I was working, and also because last week I put out 2 podcast episodes like back to back, and they were like fairly long. Like one was like 2 hours and a half and the other one was like 1 hour and like 20 minutes or something. So it was like a lot that I spent editing within 2 days. So I think I was just kind of tired and I needed a little bit of a break. I couldn't focus on work and the podcast without like overwhelming myself, so I didn't, but that's okay anyways. This episode will be out though before the new Yellowjackets and Traitors episode, so it'll be fine. I don't know yet my release schedule. I think going forward I'm gonna try to have something out every weekend, but if not, it'll be like out around when this one is, which is Wednesday. I think my goal is to have the recap episode out before the next episode goes live, so that's what I'm doing right now. Sorry for the delays, but thank you so much for tuning in. So I'm going to just jump straight into The Traitors Season 3, Episode 9. What an episode. What an episode of The Traitors. So much happened, and I'm excited to just dive in. So Episode 9 is called A Silent Assassin. In the turret, Danielle is trying to convince Carolyn that recruiting Brittany would be good for her. That's where we left off in Episode 8, with Danielle trying to convince Carolyn to recruit somebody. Carolyn really wanted to murder. She doesn't trust Danielle enough to bring somebody else into the turret. And I don't blame Carolyn as much as I, as a viewer, would have wanted to see them recruit somebody here. I do understand this season, the traitor dynamic is the most tense it's been in a turret. So I understand not wanting to bring somebody in, especially at this point in the game where Brittany, their options are slim to recruit, and they kind of would have to recruit somebody who either trusts Danielle more or trusts Carolyn more, and Danielle probably isn't going to want to recruit somebody who trusts Carolyn more, and vice versa, especially Carolyn. I kind of wanted, if I was Carolyn, I would have been like, if you really want to recruit, that's fine, we'll recruit, but it has to be Gabby. I'm not going to budge on Brittany. And maybe she did say that and we didn't see it. We only saw Danielle trying to convince Carolyn that Brittany would be a good person to recruit. But Carolyn is not having it. So eventually, and we see Danielle in confessionals really frustrated that Carolyn isn't trusting her. And it's hard because I understand all the perspectives, because Danielle did kind of throw Carolyn under the bus. I still blame Boston Rob because I think he introduced that language of betrayal in the turret. And I do wish in an ideal world that Danielle had talked to Carolyn and been like, hey, what Boston Rob did wasn't okay with me. We got to get him out. I wish they had teamed up against him instead of just not trusting each other at all. And then there was no unified unit in the turret at all. It was just kind of they were at odds the whole time. So I don't know. In an ideal world, that's what I would have wanted, but I get it. I get Carolyn's frustration. Part of me also just wishes she had maybe played along a little bit more with Danielle and then gotten her banished a little bit more towards the end. But I don't know. I get it. Anyways, moving on. Danielle agrees to murder since she can't convince Carolyn to recruit. The options to murder are those in Carolyn's group from the challenge because they were the ones who were not able to qualify for a shield. We know Sierra had the shield, but I think Danielle is just your group is the better one because it's not messy at all. Tom Sandoval was telling people Sierra didn't have the shield, so if anybody from that group died, it could be suspicious. That is just a safer bet to kill the people who couldn't even qualify for a shield, so you know that it's not well, this person told me that they had a shield. There's none of that could get back to them. Anyways, moving on. Dylan is brought up to frame Gabby because Dylan keeps going after Gabby. Carolyn doesn't like that idea. She shuts it down. Then Sam is brought up. Danielle says he's starting to make good points at the round table, and Carolyn's like, that's pretty new. Like, I don't think Sam is that big of a deal. Then Dolores is brought up, and Carolyn says she trusts both of them, though. That might not be a good kill. The edit we're getting, I don't know if there was any moment of, like, agreement, or it doesn't feel like it was too manipulated or, like, edited, or, you know, because I always try to watch reality TV with, like, a lens of, like, there's probably a lot more that happens, and the stuff they include is to sway us a certain way. Like, we're not seeing everything. So I'm like, I don't know if this conversation was as tense and, like, Carolyn constantly shutting Danielle down as it came across. Like, maybe there was a bit of that. Maybe there was a bit of, like, let's go through the pros and the cons, and we only see Carolyn listing the cons, so it looks like any idea that Danielle has, Carolyn is just shutting it down. But I also wouldn't be so surprised if this is, like, actually what happened. I don't know. Lot of tension in the turret. In confessionals, Danielle says that the castle is crumbling. She wants to be with Carolyn and, like, do it together, but, like, she's just not trusting her. Carolyn in confessional says that they don't trust each other, and it's just at this point about who gets who first. So that's, like, the edit we're building up. The two traitors are at odds. We're kind of left on, like, we don't really know who within that group is going to die, but I guess the main people it's between are, like, Dolores, Sam, Dylan. Those are the three that are kind of the most in the air right now. Gabby and Carolyn are the first two in at breakfast. They both agree that Danielle is suspicious. They talk about Danielle's, like, overacting. Like, they're very much like Danielle, her arguments for why she wouldn't be a traitor is a little bit suspicious. Gabby brings it up and Carolyn, like, agrees, and they just, like, agree with each other. But very much all bets are off. Carolyn is not shying away from the fact. She's not shying away from, like, feeding into the Danielle suspicious narrative. Brittany and Tom are then in next. They speculate on who will be murdered. Danielle and Ivar are in next, and Danielle in confessional says she's 20 steps ahead. She will plant seeds, so if Carolyn comes for her, she's ready. And this is a big thing. I will say, I guess I'll get more into my thoughts as the episode progresses, but I really liked Danielle's gameplay this episode, and a lot of people on social media hate Danielle, and it really bothers me because it's like, you could be upset that Carolyn went home. I personally am. But even if, like, I don't like, for example, like, somebody I really didn't enjoy watching was Boston Rob. If Boston Rob, like, did something and he, like, even when he got Wes out, as much as that bothered me, I could admit that was good gameplay and that was smart because of the way that, like, the way he was able to convince them to get Wes out when so much more evidence was pointing to him, in my opinion, it was impressive. Like, I feel like people don't give Danielle her flowers just because they don't like her or because they were really rooting for Carolyn. I don't really know. I also think the edit is doing Danielle dirty a little bit, but maybe not. Maybe that's true that I don't know, because it's interesting. They've been planting so many seeds of people not believing Danielle. Anyways, and the reason I say, because I imagine there are very few people in this game that go completely unscathed, like that their name is never brought up to be like, this person's kind of suspicious to me. I think that's a pretty standard thing where if you're in this game, your name will be brought up as somebody who is suspicious. So when the edit is showing one person's name come up constantly while not showing another person's, Carolyn's, it feels a little bit, like, pointed. It feels like they're trying, like, that's the narrative they're going to build, and that's what I'm preparing for. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Anyways, Dolores is in next by herself now. Two people were coming in at a time, but now it's just one. And it's now between Sam and Dylan. Dylan is the last in, which means Sam was murdered. We see him get his death notice, Sam. And he says he knew it was coming. He was starting to be good at round tables, which is true. It's true. Sam was getting better at, like, strategy of it all. He wasn't, like, floundering. He was starting to, like, pick up on things and make good points and have, like, good ideas. Like last episode when he was like, we need to ask people what Alan was wearing because that could help narrow it down, and then Tom Sandoval completely ruined that by, like, speaking over Carolyn and describing what Alan was wearing and completely defeating the point. But goodbye, Sam. I have no feelings towards you whatsoever. Not a loss for me at all. Alan does his little speech. Obviously, their little words used to point to what the challenge is. It's a chess-themed challenge. If you know that ahead of time, you can, like, pick up on it. Anyways, Dylan is surprised that he's still here. He, like, talks to the group, and he's like, we did so good in getting this far. And he, in confessional, says that him being here means that somebody he trusts is a traitor and they're keeping him around, which is very astute and very true. Like, if you're in the game at this point, because early in the game, sometimes the traitors will just kill people who are super faithful, who would never get banished. Like, there's a lot of things you need to think about as a faithful in this game of, like, why haven't I been murdered? And I do think when you're this far in the game, a huge part of that is, like, you are an asset to the traitors at this point. They trust you and they think that you're not going to turn on them. Like, the traitors, the farther you get into the game, they're taking the people who aren't going to suss them out, who aren't going to, at the end of the game, keep voting that we need to keep banishing people, you know? They want people who will wholeheartedly be like, they are not traitors at the end, so they can be, so they won't banish them and they'll stay there and take the money from them. Like, that's very true, especially somebody as vocal as Dylan. Because, like, Tom Sandoval, he's still here. Like, I think he's just not, he's just not a priority to them or not a threat in a way. Whereas Dylan, it would make sense for them to kill him at this point if he didn't trust any of them. Like, if he was onto them, it would make sense to kill him because he has, like, influence and power and he's, like, actively, you know what I mean? Anyways, okay, let me move on. Gabby and Sandoval have a conversation. He thinks Dolores is a traitor, and she thinks the traitors will begin turning on each other. Intercut a little bit with Gabby and Sandoval's conversation is Danielle and Dolores talking, and then eventually we see the end of Danielle and Dolores's conversation. Dolores, like, trusts Danielle. She's like, you're playing a great game. Danielle then tells Dolores that a common trait of the traitors is that they attack around tables. They're very aggressive. And I feel like I kind of noticed this in my recap last week, where I didn't say it this exact way, but I was like, the way that traitors defend themselves in round tables is by, like, throwing it back on somebody else. And they always, like, the people who, so far, the majority who have had all of these, like, big thought out defenses where they then flip it to somebody else, those people have more often than not been traitors. The faithful, when they're accused, like Sierra last week, was just kind of like, I'm not, because you don't have all the information. The only information you have is that you are not a traitor. So you're like, I swear to God, I'm not a traitor. This kind of reminds me of, like, I went to a murder mystery party in college and I fully was like, guys, I swear to God, I'm not the murderer. I was like, I don't have any evidence because it was a party. So I was, like, really not paying that close attention to that. I went into this murder mystery party so prepared to, like, be in character, but they didn't give me, like, my character packet until, like, I arrived there. So I was like, I had no time to prepare. So I didn't read it. Like, I didn't totally know what was going on. I wasn't that deep into trying to figure out who the murderer was. All I remember is that I was, like, a big character because when you had to fill out a survey, it was like, do you want to be, like, a big player in the game? I was like, yeah, because I wanted to act. I wanted to, like, really be in character. So unserious of me. But anyways, I was like, my like, secret was that I was a plebeian. And I was like, guys, I swear to God, I didn't murder the guy. I'm just a plebeian. So I don't know. It, obviously not to the same extent, but it's like, at some point, you don't have, like, all of the information where a traitor can, like, frame somebody in order to then at a round table throw it back on them in a way that a faithful can't. So this felt kind of like she was saying, hey, this is a thing traitors do that I feel like I kind of picked up on. And that made, I was proud of myself. I was like, exactly, I just said that, Danielle. Anyways, she's very much planting the seed, though, Danielle is, to Dolores, that if Carolyn goes after Danielle at a round table, it'll look suspicious. It'll, like, backfire then because Dolores will have this in mind that, like, this is a very traitorous move to attack at a round table, to flip it back on them at a round table. Dylan is suspicious of Gabby still, but he also, like, realizes he needs to pivot and evolve, and they talk, and he tells her that he thinks that she would have killed him if she was a traitor, and she's like 1000%. And she has a very funny confessional here where she says they always come back. Love her. But their beef is kind of squashed because at this point he's like, I don't think she's a traitor. It doesn't make sense. Which is smart. He's, like, pivoting and he's like, at this point the traitors aren't the people that I don't trust. It's the people I do. which is true. Then we see Dylan and Carolyn have a conversation, and he tells her he thinks there's one traitor left, and it's Danielle, and she's been carrying him to the end. Carolyn, in confessionals, is like a bit torn about whether it's smart to turn in Danielle now, but she does appreciate that Dylan's finally listening to her. She doesn't know if it's like a good move to go after Danielle again at the round table. That's very much the tension that we are building up. The round table is like going to be a big thing in this episode. Danielle and Brittany have an emotional moment where Brittany says she was worried that Danielle wouldn't come in, and in confessionals, Danielle feels bad about this because she's a traitor, and she like feels bad about betraying Brittany in this way. And she says that her ideal situation now would be that if they got Carolyn banished so she could bring Brittany in as a traitor and they could win the whole thing together. Challenge was actually really important for once, and it was the best one this episode because it was like a game of chess where the traitors the night before in the turret like picked answers to questions, and the players had to guess what the traitors would say, and it gave insight into what the traitors were thinking, you know, in a really, really effective way that I really enjoyed. Like, I think most challenges should be like this. Some of them are so annoying to watch because it's like, I got nothing out of this and it wasn't even that interesting. Like, I think still my least favorite challenge, I don't know, there have been a few, like the one where they had to lower the 3 new players out of the cages. That one was boring and like kind of pointless because it's like, okay, obviously they're going to join the game. It would have been a little bit more interesting if like they didn't get one of the people. That would have been a bit more like, oh, they didn't, but like, I don't know. But I think the worst one for me was the one where they had to like go through the doors because it was boring to watch. They didn't win any money and it didn't give me any new insight into like the dynamics between anybody. It was really, really boring, a flop of a competition. It still pisses me off to think about it because it was like all of that for nothing. Like, I don't know. Some of the competitions, like last episode, the doll competition, that one was funny to watch at least. Like, it was entertaining, even if it didn't tell me much about the dynamics between the house or like give insight into the mind of the traitors the way this episode's challenge did, and that I really, really liked. It was at least funny and entertaining. Like, there have been some challenges where it's like, why am I watching this? Even like the first challenge where they have to choose people to get off the boat, that was a somewhat interesting challenge with the whole people have to get off the boat thing because it did introduce a lot of dynamics to us about like these people are willing to sacrifice and they look traitorous. Some traitors are getting off the boat because they don't feel like they're in danger. I don't know. There's some that like there's a little bit there to like work on and go off of, where others are just really, really boring. But this one was good. It was a game of chess where pieces would come out and each piece like represented a question and they had to choose somebody that was the answer to that question, and then they would get it right or wrong. And they found out the answer when they got it right or wrong so they could get insight into the mind of the traitors. Meanwhile, the traitors in the turret are trying to figure out how to answer these questions to not maybe give themselves away. But anyways, let me go question by question. Also, Parvati and Kate come back to kind of like run the challenge a little bit. They're just like there and they read the answers and stuff, but they read the questions, but it was really great to see them. I was so happy. I hope Kate comes back every season. Like, if this lasts like 20 seasons, I hope every single season Kate makes some kind of appearance. The first question, it was like the piece was the snake, and it was who has been flying under the radar. And the answer is Brittany, because Brittany had been accused of that at the last round table where Sarah got banished. And the consensus of the group is Brittany because of that, so they do get the money and they get that question correct. The next question is who is the biggest threat to the traitors? Their answer once again is Brittany. Carolyn was kind of somewhat pushing for this, but Danielle, we see in confessionals, say that she was like fine with this. She let that be the answer because that takes the suspicion off of her, because Brittany would never think that she would think that she was a threat to her. So like, you know, so that was smart. But Sandoval says himself first, like in the group when they're trying to guess the answer, he says himself, and they end up agreeing with him. They get the question wrong though, because the answer was Brittany. Sandoval's so funny. The next question is who is the leader of the pack? In the turret, they first say Dylan, but then they're like, that would maybe be a little bit suspicious because Dylan trusts both of us. So, like, maybe we shouldn't have his name in there because that could lead back to us. So they settle on Sandoval because they think there's no way that he wouldn't say himself, which is so true because he just did that for the biggest threat. So they settle on Tom, and while they're playing, Tom does say himself first. He's like, I think I'm the leader of the pack. But most of them push back that Dylan makes the most sense. Like, they're like, no, Dylan, it has to be Dylan. Like, I vote Dylan. And Carolyn is like, hey, I think we should hear Sandoval out, which was a mistake. But eventually they settle on Dylan. But the fact that she spoke up in defense of Sandoval, she wants the money. She says in confessionals that she wants the money, so she's trying to, like, be like, let's hear Sandoval out, which was a mistake. They settle on Dylan. They get the question wrong. Also, Parvati and Kate think that Dylan gives Pilot Pete vibes, which I really liked because I agree. Dolores points out after the round that Carolyn was on it, like that she knew. Carolyn denies this. She's like, no, I didn't say that. I never said that, which was stupid, it was stupid. The whole way she handled this was really stupid because it's like, just don't speak up. Like, don't try to sway them to the answer that you know is the right answer, because then when they find out, because if they didn't find, let's say they only found out that the answer was wrong, but they didn't find out what the right answer was, maybe it'd be slightly different. But it's like, they know, like, they're gonna find out that that was the right answer, and they're gonna be like, why was she swaying us to that answer? Because obviously she wants the money anyways. But denying it, I think, was even worse. She could have been like, oh, I just wanted to hear everybody out. Like, I felt like Sandoval's voice got kind of lost in the fray. I thought we should, like, weigh all the options. I don't know. She could have handled it a little bit better. I wouldn't have even spoken up for Sandoval, but, like, when you're called out on that, she could have been like, I don't know. Instead of, like, denying she did that, she could have, like, found a way to spin it. But Dylan is now beginning to become suspicious of Carolyn because that was kind of odd. He's like, the two people who spoke up for the answer that we know now was correct, which is Sandoval, but that's just kind of his character. But the second one was Carolyn, which seems kind of odd to me, and now I'm kind of suspecting her a little bit. So that's a little bit of tension we are now beginning to have. The last question is, whose voice is the most irrelevant? In the turret, Carolyn really pushes for herself, and Danielle lets her. She's like, yeah, okay, your voice, that put you as the answer. Danielle thinks that this is a bad move for Carolyn, so she lets her do it because then attention won't be on her. Carolyn in the competition is really pushing for her, and they're kind of like, but we don't think your voice is irrelevant. She's like, no, I know, but I've been saying that nobody listens to me so much that the traitors are gonna put me, because that's like the obvious answer, because I've been saying that I don't. Which, you know what, Ivar is like the most obvious one, in my opinion, for this question. She insists that it's her, so they end up choosing her, and it's correct. And then this was a bad move for Carolyn. Like, this, I feel like, may have been the nail in her coffin for the, like, list of things that Carolyn did wrong that made her suspicious when she hadn't been. And to Danielle's credit, Danielle set this up perfectly. Danielle was thinking ahead in order to set these traps that Carolyn fell into. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, Danielle's the worst traitor ever. We're so mad at her for getting Carolyn out because Carolyn was such a better traitor. But, like, as much as I agree that Danielle made a lot of blunders up until this point, the way she played this game, this episode, to me really shows that she's like, I mean, she's not the worst traitor ever, because she set all of these traps that Carolyn fell into. I don't know. I knew what happened going into the episode because I watched it like a day late and I had already seen the spoilers. And I had seen a lot of people being mad at Danielle, and I'm just like, watching the whole thing though, I'm like, as much as I like Carolyn and as much as I think she was making great moves and doing great things before that happened, can we really blame, I mean, we can blame Danielle, but like, Carolyn kind of did this to herself. Like, she messed up in ways that were like just too big to recover from. Do I think if she didn't have, like, Danielle caused it, obviously, but to me, I think we should be like, that was such a good move from Danielle, instead of being like, Danielle's the worst for getting out the person. I don't know. I just try to watch these shows with like an appreciation for the gameplay, so I don't really know. And I liked both of them, so it wasn't really gonna be Like, it was going to be a loss for me, but not in the, like, oh, now I don't want anybody to win kind of attitude that some people have. Anyways, let me keep going. Back at the castle, Ivar is talking to Carolyn about Danielle and their suspicions of Danielle. Carolyn and Dylan talk, and he kind of implies that it's between Danielle and Carolyn. And Carolyn's like, my name's out there? What do you mean my name's out there? It's a little bit awkward. Danielle finds out from Ivar that Carolyn was mentioning her name. And now she's going for Carolyn. All bets are off. She is going for Carolyn now, which is valid. I'll defend her. She has all the right. She has all the right. What do you mean? She tells Dolores and Ivar that Carolyn is acting dumb. She's like, have you ever seen the movie? I don't even remember. Columbo. I don't know. Never seen the movie. Me personally, me. I've never seen the movie, so I have no idea what she was talking about. But, like, apparently it's about somebody who's, like, really smart but acts dumb so people don't think they're as smart as they are. So she brings that up, and she's like, that's what Carolyn's doing. Like, she is acting like a fool and acting really dumb, so we don't pick up on the fact that she's a traitor. Well, actually, she doesn't say that. She's like, have you ever, like, and Ivar's like, that sounds like Carolyn. So very much at this point, it's Carolyn versus Danielle going into the round table, and what a stressful round table it was. At the round table, Ivar starts, he says he thinks there's 2 traitors left and they're both girls. A lot of them try to kind of pivot and be like Gabby, for example, is like, let's not get into like all of that. Let's just figure out the facts we have right now so we can like decide what to do right now. And Carolyn says that Danielle lied. Faithful don't need to lie. She explains the lie that Carolyn's in Brittany's name when that didn't happen. Danielle's defense is that Carolyn acts silly and dumb, Forrest Gumps a lot, which a lot of people took issue with that. I also will say, as much as I do not think Danielle was like that much at fault this episode, like I think, you know, she played the game. I didn't love the Forrest Gump comment because it feels like mildly ableist to me. Maybe not mildly, like maybe just like fully ableist. I really didn't like it. There's no need to bring up Forrest Gump. You know what I mean? Let's not bring up Forrest Gump. You could say she acts dumb. I don't know about Columbo, but like I don't know that story. But like the Forrest Gump feels a little bit insensitive, especially because like he's talked about feeling like underestimated and judged for like who she is. So I didn't love that. I will say I felt like that comment was a little bit unnecessary and insensitive. But the rest of like the attacks, I don't take issue with. People also took issue on social media because Chrishell said in an interview that Danielle was swearing on her grandchildren. I don't take issue with that. That's just like run-of-the-mill Big Brother gameplay, like swearing on your grandchildren. Okay, like I don't really care. If I ever had a loved one go on Big Brother and I'd be like, please swear on me all day long. I don't care. Swear on me all you want, even when you're lying. I give you the permission. I won't be offended if anybody's like, how dare they swear on Emmy. I'd be like, good for them. I told them that they should have done that ahead of time, okay? Be like, I love Emmy so much. She means everything to me. And you know what? I'm swearing on her. And I'd never do that because of how much I love her. Please swear on me. Anybody, please, I'm begging you. It's fine. I give you permission. Not anybody who's listening to this, but like the people in my life who are close to me. You know who you are. I give you permission to swear on me. Anyways. Like, that's just the name of the game. Swearing on your grandchildren. I don't know. But I think that's part of what makes the Traitors so interesting, is that people with very different mindsets going into reality TV, trying to play this game, like, the gamers just have a different approach to things. Chrishell is like, from Selling Sunset, that's not like something you do, like, I swear on my grandchildren when you're trying to sell a house, or like trying to be like, this didn't happen. And you know what I mean? It's a very different... The game that you come from, like the show that you come from, impacts the role you play in the Traitors in a way that I think makes it such a fascinating, like, third wave competitive reality TV show. I haven't watched many, so I don't know. But, like, other shows where it's, like, people from different reality shows compete, I wonder how much of that, like, plays a role. Like House of Villains or something like that, where it's, like, they do have people from, like, The Bachelor and like other, like, I wonder if that plays a role as much, but I don't know, because it's probably a different dynamic, because when you're a villain, you're playing a different game. Like House of Villains, I've watched like maybe one episode. I feel like it's probably, and it was just the episode where they all introduced each other, so I don't really feel like I got much gameplay, but I feel like it's probably different because there's a level that you're like all on, where here it's like there are people who are known to be deceitful with people who are just like regular honest people who, you know what I mean? So I'm sure that's a huge factor in this game more than other games, but I thought that was really interesting. Anyways, let me keep moving. After the Forrest Gump comment, Carolyn's like, Dylan, you've seen my season. Is this how I am? Like, am I putting on a performance? And he's like, no, this is just how you are. That's why I love you. Danielle then points out the tells in the challenge and the way that she has acted like a traitor in the past by aggressively coming at her at the round table. And Danielle says that she didn't say Carolyn's name for the last few days because she was afraid she'd kill her. Carolyn really emphasizes that, like, she hasn't been lying. She's been herself. She's been telling everybody the same thing. She hasn't lied. She hasn't needed to, where Danielle did. She threw her name out there unnecessarily. She's like, she's lying, and that's not something a faithful would do. That's main, like, I do have to say, Carolyn's defenses against Danielle, at least in the edit, were really not very strong. Again, at least in the edit, maybe there was more that we saw, but I feel like she wasn't prepared. Like, Danielle came with the, like, she came at me in the round table, look at all these tells from the competition, where I felt like Carolyn only really had one argument. Like, I don't know. Maybe there was a lot that was cut out, but, like, I feel like she could have had more leading up to it. And again, maybe she did, but it's like there are plenty of things that I could point to as a viewer. And again, I have, like, the ability, it's really much easier as a viewer when I have the example to point back to because it's like on video where like you just lived it and a few days have passed. But like I could very easily as a viewer list things, like I could build a case for Danielle to be a traitor, and Carolyn like didn't really do that. She just kind of tried to defend herself by being like, Danielle's lying, without, I feel like there wasn't much substance there where Danielle had like concrete evidence. So I felt really bad for Carolyn, but like I kind of didn't blame her. But the votes in order are: Carolyn votes for Danielle, Ivar votes for Carolyn, Dolores votes for Tom, of all people. But you know what? I did say, and you can quote me on this, Emmy Cardinale 2025, if you're gonna have a throwaway vote in the Traitors, it better be for Tom. Danielle votes for Carolyn, Gabby votes for Danielle, Brittany votes for Carolyn. So now it's 3 votes for Carolyn, 2 votes for Danielle, 1 vote for Tom. I didn't write down who Tom Sandoval voted for. I think I missed that. He voted for Dolores. I'm so sorry that I didn't write that in my notes, but he voted for, Dolores votes for Tom, Tom votes for Dolores, Danielle votes for Carolyn, Gabby votes for Danielle, Brittany votes for Carolyn, Danielle, and then Dylan is the tiebreaker. We know that he's been suspicious of both. So like, it was great that they had him last. He votes for Carolyn, and Carolyn is banished. She reveals she's a traitor. Danielle has a very emotional reaction that, again, people on social media took issue with. I don't really care. Like, it was a little bit dramatic? Yes. Who cares? I think it's also easier, again, I will say this like a million times, but we as viewers have such a different relationship to, like, these actions than people there. And while people have been saying that, like, it does feel overacting, to us it feels very obviously overacting because we're watching the show and we have like the context. Like we don't, like, the emotions we have when we're watching the show are not the emotions that these players have when they're playing the game. You know what I mean? It's like you can watch football and you can be, I don't watch football, I don't know, but like you can watch a sport and be like somewhat emotionally invested, but then have some distance where you're like, hey, if you lose, I guess people who watch sports don't feel that close, like don't feel that, but like there's just a different, emotions are heightened when you're actually playing these games and you're actually there in the moment where somebody gets banished. For us, it's like we know what they're going to be a traitor or not when you watch it. So you know, like Danielle's acting feels so obviously overacting to us because we're like, it's a TV show that I'm watching, why are you being so dramatic, and I know you're a traitor, so it's fake. Like we have the foresight of knowing it's fake, so it feels more fake to us. Whereas if you're actually there, I feel like it wouldn't be so crazy to think that somebody actually got that swept up into the emotions. You know? Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like it's easier for us as viewers to be like, that's so fake, that's such a bad game move, because we have all of this data that the players don't have. So while to us it seems obvious certain things, and it seems obviously fake, and it seems so stupid and like such blunders, to them, like the things, I mean, the fact that they kept focusing on the coffin theory felt so stupid to me, but that felt so real to them. You know what I mean? It's like, it's easier as viewers to be like, Danielle's making so many mistakes because we have all of the information. They don't. And I will say, it's not like Danielle has been like cool, calm, and collected the entire time, and then this was like the first. She's been very outwardly emotional and crying, and like this hasn't been like it's not so shocking to me that if Danielle was a faithful, like let's say that this is how she would react, because this is how she is reacting. The same way that people didn't really think Carolyn being like fidgety or nervous was like a tell, because that's just kind of who she is. I feel like at this point Danielle's been very emotional. That doesn't seem like that crazy to me. Anyways, after the roundtable, Gabby, Brittany, and Sandoval are having a conversation, and Gabby, very astutely, is like, you don't think that was traitor on traitor fighting. It was giving Bob and Rob. And she, spot on. I love Gabby. I want her to win, but I fear she may be murdered before then, but I can pray that she won't. At the turret, Alan reveals that because there's only one traitor left, she has to recruit, and this is the last opportunity to recruit. She will have to give an ultimatum to a faithful, join or die, and if the person accepts, they then, as a duo, will kill somebody as well. And she obviously chooses Brittany. Brittany gets the little invitation, and it's left on that cliffhanger of Brittany going to the secret meeting. I think Brittany will probably accept when she sees Danielle. Like, I don't think she's going to be like, yeah, no, kill me. I think she will accept there. And I fear that they may kill Gabby then, because Gabby, like, I don't know, I hope not, but because Gabby had just said to that group of Sandoval and Brittany that it was giving traitor on traitor fighting, I feel like when Brittany's brought in, I'm a little bit afraid that she'll be like, Gabby's like suspicious of you, so Danielle will then they'll kill Gabby. I hope not. It would be a smart move on Brittany's part to be like, hey, Gabby was suspicious of you. But I don't know, because Sandoval's there, so then couldn't Sandoval, I don't know. I guess it depends the approach that Brittany wants to take in her duo as a traitor. I don't know. A lot could happen. I really hope they don't kill Gabby. I want Gabby to win, or at least make it to the final round table and the final fire thing. But that's where we leave off for the traitors. I'm excited to see where the season goes. I think Danielle played this episode really, really well, and I think she earned that. Like, she earned that banishment of Carolyn's. And while I do obviously think that she like started the whole thing by like trying to throw Carolyn's name out there at all, and then Carolyn retaliated, and then like, you know, it was never the same after that. She accomplished what she wanted to do, and she did it well. And Carolyn made a lot of mistakes. Like, at that point, I can't fully blame Danielle for like Carolyn's, like, why would she put herself as the person whose voice is the most irrelevant? Like, as sad as I was to see Carolyn go, it was done well on Danielle's part in a way that I can like appreciate. So anyways, I keep doing this thing where I record like half the podcast in the morning and then the other half later. So if the audio changed a little bit, it's because it's been a few hours since I recorded my little Traitors recap. But now I'm going to talk about my thoughts about Yellowjackets Season 3, Episode 3, in the same format that I did for my last episode about Episodes 1 and 2. So I'm not going to recap it scene by scene. At a later date, when I do my deep dive on the season, I'll talk scene by scene what happened and then track the narrative that way. Right now, I'm just going to dive into like character dynamics every episode and stuff like that, and just kind of ramble about my thoughts. If you enjoy my thoughts on Yellowjackets, I post a lot on TikTok about Yellowjackets. But anyways, okay, so episode 3 of Yellowjackets was quite an experience. I don't know why I said it like that. Anyways, first thing I want to talk about is the Mari coach dynamic of it all. I talked about this last episode a little bit, but like we got a lot more this episode of Mari and Coach Scott. I really appreciated, like, I loved that it opened up with Mari in the cave singing, I'm too sexy for this cave, I'm too sexy to be murdered. So funny. I love Mari. Mari was really growing on me. I will be honest, she kind of pissed me off last season with the blind faith she had in Lottie. I don't know. I'm a Lottie defender in a lot of ways, and I feel like a lot of people viewers place a lot of responsibility on Lottie because she's like their leader. And I just feel like a lot of that was placed onto her, and all the Lottie haters will like argue that she manipulated them or whatever. And I just don't view it that way. Everybody has a right to interpret the characters in the way that they want, but I don't really interpret Lottie as this manipulative character that a lot of people describe her as. So it did bother me last season, like, of Mari being like, Lottie's gonna be fine. Lottie's gonna be fine. Lottie doesn't need guns to go hunting out in the wilderness in the winter. And then Lottie almost dies. Like, you know what I mean? That always kind of bothered me with Mari. Between Mari and Shauna, that beef, I was never particularly like, I wasn't really against Mari. I'm like, why are you poking the bear? Like, Shauna's really, really angry and upset. Like, just don't mess with it. I also, like, I don't know. I would have just eaten the soup that she had spit in. I wouldn't have caused the trouble. But with the Coach Mari dynamic, I can see both perspectives, I guess, of like Mari. A lot of people, I need to stop like talking about the episode and engaging in my mind with the discourse with people who aren't like, a lot of what I'm talking about is like stuff I've seen and then I disagree with, and I'm like, I don't know if that's what I should spend this podcast doing. Let me just talk about my own thoughts without having to like refute other people's arguments I disagree with. I completely understand why Coach Scott, like, I understand why he tied her up and he kept her, because he doesn't want to be sold out. He doesn't want to be killed by these girls who, again, I said this last episode, but it's like, again, I don't know, maybe I'm like giving them too much credit. Obviously, a lot of people die, so they are going to just start hunting for sport. But like, as of now in the story, the only time we've seen them kill people, none of them have yet to like kill somebody directly yet, when Coach Scott is like so isolated from them. You know what I mean? Like, at the beginning of season 3, we pick up the 2 people they've eaten. They ate Jackie. They didn't kill Jackie. She froze to death, R.I.P. And they didn't even intend to eat her. It wasn't even like, oh, she's dead, now we're gonna eat her. The wilderness, if you will, nature, whatever, ended up like sauteing her. And they smelled meat. They were starving. They ate her. And the Javi thing, yes, they were hunting Natalie, but he fell through the ice. Once again, every instance so far of somebody dying and them eating the other person, yes, they killed Javi because they didn't save him, but they haven't like murdered anybody directly in like a violent manner. And also, like, it's summer, they have animals. I just feel like I see his side, but it's also just, I don't know. If I was an adult stranded with a bunch of teenagers, I would not want to like abandon them in the way that Coach Scott has. And I get that he's like afraid of not, but maybe it's just me. I feel like you join them rather than, if you can't beat them, join them. Like the staying away, because it's like, what happens to then if you're not with the group, if they get rescued? You're not going to find out. Like, I feel like in this kind of environment, I would rather be with the pack than alone. So I don't know. But anyways, I'm rambling. I really appreciated getting an insight into like Mari and Coach's dynamic pre-crash. Like, there's so much of that we don't get information on. The dynamics pre-crash, the only information we have are like the pilot episode. And then obviously you get like backstory throughout, but we don't have much background of Mari in general, and we're getting more and more of her character in a way that I really like. And I liked finding out this kind of relationship she had with Coach Scott, which makes him keeping her there and that whole dynamic even more interesting, because like she had a crush on him and she like got detention on purpose to spend more time with him. She made up a lie about him so there'd be less competition. He reveals to her then that he's gay, and that he, even if he wasn't, he'd rather like stab himself in the eye than touch her. Their whole dynamic was quite interesting, and they kind of like share with each other. They open up. He talks about what his life was like before and how this is also baffling to him because he's just a normal guy. He's a normal guy. And again, that must be a very unique experience to be the only adult in this group of teenage girls. Like, that's a very, very difficult position he's in. I fear I'm not that attached to Coach Ben. Like, I have nothing against him. I don't hate him the way that some people hate him, but I just genuinely don't care about him dying. I'm sure if he does die, it'll be impactful, because like Javi as a character, such a sweetheart. Like, I really enjoyed him as a character and I had very fond connections to. But like, there are very few, when watching the show, I don't really let myself get too attached to the teenagers who I don't know have like adult counterparts. Like, that was really, I watched season 1 when season 2 had already started premiering, so I already knew Lottie was alive. I got attached to her in season 1, but I knew she was gonna live. There aren't many teenagers that I let myself get attached to that I didn't know were alive. So I don't particularly, or even not just teenagers, but like Coach Ben, I didn't really feel an attachment to, because I figured he was gonna die. I'm like, he's gotta be dead. Because I feel like in the narrative, in the adult timeline, when they talk about the survivors, it's never like the surviving Yellowjackets and their coach. I feel like if he was an adult who survived, that would have been somebody they talked about. So I never thought that he lived. So I'm not particularly holding out hope that he's not going to die. So if he dies, like, I'm just, at this point, it's like, it's in the wilderness's hands. I don't really care about Coach Ben. I did appreciate a bit more insight into him. I really like Mari, though. I really liked when she told that story about her cousin who died of brain cancer. I really liked that insight into Mari. Something I really like about season 1 is when the characters had kind of dedicated episodes. Obviously, they weren't completely dedicated to them, but we got more of a backstory on some of the main girls. And I just appreciate, like, these little glimpses into who these girls are. I really appreciate that. Because then it'll make their death that much more impactful. So if Mari does die, like Akila at this point, if Akila dies, I'm going to cry. And I say if, let's be real, Akila's gonna die. I don't like to think about that, but like I fear that she's not long for this world, Akila. But I really liked Mari and Ben, that whole dynamic. I think it gave us insight into each of them in a really interesting way. And then he lets her go. She kind of tries to convince him many times to let her go because she's like, you'll be fine. Like, they're not going to come after you, especially if you didn't burn down the cabin. Like, it's fine. Or at some point she's like, I won't even tell them that it was you who found me. Eventually he does let her go. And when she gets back to the group, she does sell him out. I don't really blame her though, because it wasn't like she got back and she was like, Coach Scott found me. She, I think, didn't really devise a rational, like, thought out plan or thought out explanation for why she was gone for so long. So then when she was like, I injured my leg, and Shauna was like, but how did you get back? Like, that doesn't make any sense. At that point, I kind of get it. Like, I get it, because he also, like, it wasn't, if Coach Scott had, like, helped her out of the hole and then been like, okay, Mari, you can go. I get why he did it, but it's also, like, not going to look good to them that he held her hostage in a cave that he's been living in. Like, I don't really know. I don't blame her. One, because they would have been able to tell. The last thing you want to do is be on their bad side, like this group, you know? There's, especially Shauna leading the questioning, the last thing you want to do is get on Shauna's bad side. Okay, last time that happened, you ran away and dislocated your leg. Like, let's not. I don't blame Mari for telling on him. I don't. They go searching for him. I'll get into that because that leads into, like, the ending of this season. Not season, oh my god, of the episode with, like, a dream sequence that I want to dive into. So I'll get to that in a second. The next thing I want to talk about is Van's cancer and Ty's reaction and all of that. So we find out that Van is somewhat, not cured. It's like, it stopped metastasizing. It's getting significantly better in a way that is abnormal for the stage of cancer that she has. So Van is getting better. When she tells Ty is like, the waiter died. And Van automatically freaks out, and Ty's like, no, it's happening again, like, embrace it. And she lights a candle, she chants to the wilderness, like, she embraces it. At this point, she's like, she wants more time with Van, so who cares who has to die to get it? And, well, that is romantic in a way. Taissa, I think, especially in the adult timeline, more so than the teen timeline, is a character that I find very fascinating, like, very confusing. I think it's because the whole other Ty thing is a huge part of her storyline, and I don't really know how, like, what I make of that, to be honest. Like, I really don't know what other Ty is. Like, there are some things about Yellowjackets that I feel like I can, like, dive into, and I can somewhat understand or come up with ideas of what the reasoning behind certain things are. I really don't understand what that other Ty thing is going to be. And it honestly scares me. It scares me. Also, like, if we do get an explanation, I really hope we find out what the dirt has to do with it. Like, why was she eating dirt? That is a big question I have. Like, I have some questions about other Ty, and I just don't understand this. But it does really fascinate me how motivated Ty is to embrace the wilderness if it is to save Van. Especially because young Ty, at least during season 2, there's a bit of a shift where she starts attending Lottie's, like, wilderness mindfulness group, as I like to call it, to please Van. But Ty from the beginning doesn't really buy into it. Is very, like, not with Lottie and trying to connect to the wilderness. She's looking at things much more practically than, like, any kind of spiritual connection that Lottie is trying to get them to have to the experience they're going through. Like, Thais is very much not thinking about that. And so it's interesting to me to see this, and I do think a huge part of it is Van, but it's also interesting because the moments where we've seen Taissa maybe connect to the wilderness before have been, a lot of them were about her, like in season 1 and I think into season 2. No, she wins at the end of season 1. But like a big thing that the moments that we saw Tai or other Tai connect to the wilderness were tied to her career, like they were about her running for office. And it's interesting now, but when we saw those moments of Tai trying to connect to the wilderness and maybe like make the sacrifices that she made, all of those things were other Tai. There was red paint on her door. It was like spill blood or whatever. All of those moments that maybe were Taissa some way connecting to the wilderness, they were like unconscious, subconscious. They were like other Tai, right? We didn't know it was Tai herself until later on. Their dog goes missing. It's not explained until it's other Tai. It's other Tai throughout all of those things, all of her trying to connect to the wilderness in order to maybe win or get her life together or whatever it is. It's other Tai, right? Now we see kind of more a conscious, at least it seems like there's not much like memory loss. Like a lot of other Tai came with her being like, I didn't do that, like that wasn't me. And now it doesn't seem like we have many moments where Taissa is like, I don't remember saying that, or I don't remember doing that. Like it feels very much like, even if it is other Tai, it's like somewhat, it's like fully her as well. Like she's consciously doing it. It's not like a subconscious repressed thing that is trying to connect to the wilderness. It's like she is connecting to the wilderness. And I think it's interesting that connecting to Van and the wilderness helping Van is what makes other Tai maybe more conscious and like present with Tai. Like other Tai and Tai kind of blend together when it has to do with Van and Van staying alive and the wilderness keeping Van alive. That's so interesting to me. Okay, moving on to the next thing I want to talk about is the Lottie, Callie, Shauna dynamic of it all. Huge dynamic this episode that we got a lot of. So Lottie's still staying with Shauna. She like is trying to be a model house guest. She's like, I'm booked, which was really funny. Anyways, we do not know if Lottie's actually booked. The next time we see Lottie is when Callie is meeting her at the mall, and then Lottie like shoplifts with Callie. And like the Callie Lottie dynamic is quite interesting to me because there are so many different like readings of it, many of which I disagree with. I really need to stop in this podcast being like, I saw this and it bothered me. But unfortunately, by the time I record these, it's not like the episode is purely fresh, which honestly, I don't know if it's unfortunately. I kind of like having a few days to like digest my thoughts and then rewatch and like kind of form an opinion with all of that. But I guess not to talk so much. Let me just talk about how I, Emmy, interpret the Lottie Callie dynamic without other people, without a bitch in my ear telling me that I'm wrong. This is the Emmy Awards, okay? I share my thoughts. You can share yours with me in the comments, in my DMs, but this is how I interpret the Callie Lottie dynamic. I think Lottie desperately wants like a community, and I think that is what led her to become a cult leader. This is, I think, I don't know how hot of a take it is, but my biggest interpretation of Lottie as a character, which I don't feel like I've seen many people talk about. People have a lot of like readings of Lottie as a character, and the one that my personal reading of Lottie Matthews as a character is, I think, and I'm talking about what led Lottie to be who she is in the present day. I think Lottie, after the rescue, we know she stopped talking, and we know she was like institutionalized for a long time. My reading of Lottie Matthews is that institutionalization shaped her into the adult that she is, and is directly connected to why she started a cult. She didn't have autonomy, she didn't have community, so she was trying to like reclaim her power. She was trying to help people in a way that she never received help. I do not think that Lottie Matthews has some kind of like Machiavellian or like narcissistic or like some kind of like, a lot of people place like all of these motivations on Lottie without, I feel like, factoring in the psychological impact that being institutionalized has on a person. Like people always talk about Lottie, and I don't feel like that is ever factored in, because I think it makes total sense. I'm not saying it's right, but I don't think her being institutionalized is like a non-factor. I think that's a huge reason why she started her own community, and she claimed and she maybe has the want to be in control that a cult leader does. You know what I mean? I don't think that it's like some kind of manipulative thing that was present from the teen timeline and she's a two-time cult leader. Like the way people characterize Lottie Matthews, I really don't feel like factors in a lot of how being treated inhumanely when it comes to like mental health and like your sanity, like your sense of reality. I don't think people factor that in enough. I really don't. So I don't think, and maybe, again, people will disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't care. This is my interpretation of Lottie. Whatever. I really think that a lot of her childhood, her youth, was taken away from her. In the same way that all of the women are somewhat trying to connect to younger versions of themselves, Van with the nostalgia and being super into the VHS tapes and having a video store and very much like being kind of stuck in the 90s in that way. Shauna, we see her very much like in season 1 trying to connect to Adam and like acting like a teenager in many ways. I think Lottie is trying to help people in ways that she didn't receive. And I think she connects with Callie because Callie is at the age she was when they went missing. And she sees Callie's like interest in this wilderness and this whole thing. And she wants to help her. Like when she's shoplifting with her, she like asks her who she is, like how she would define herself if she didn't have embarrassment or something along those lines. Like I really don't think that it's like some like dangerous manipulative thing she's trying to do. I think she wants to help people in ways that she never received. And I think she sees a young Shauna in Callie. But the difference between young Shauna and Callie is that Callie actually is open to hearing Lottie. I'm not saying she should be or she shouldn't be, but we see Lottie in the teen timeline trying to help Shauna through her grief and Shauna shutting her down, calling her crazy. And that's never really changed in their dynamic. I think Callie listens to her. She hears her out. I think Lottie really just wants like community and family and I don't know. Anyways, so she shoplifts with Callie. Then they're making Shauna dinner and Shauna gets home and notices when she's trying the dinner that Callie has Jackie's heart necklace on. She freaks out. She's like, where did you get that? Lottie says, I gave it to her. It never meant what you thought it meant. Shauna understandably loses her mind, rips it off of Callie, tells Lottie to get out of her house. I think Shauna was completely valid in this because we do see it later being like, I mean, the first time we see it, like the role that has in the wilderness, after Jackie dies, Shauna gets it from Jackie's body before Jackie is meant to be cremated, but then again, she's like flambéed or whatever by the wilderness. Then the next time we see it is when they begin the hunt and they place it on Natalie. Like they're going to place it on Natalie before they kill her. It's like a weird mark of sacrifice, if you will. And we see it in the opening scene that Pit Girl is wearing it. So it's implied that it's not just about it being Jackie's necklace, which obviously is already charged. We saw Callie in Jackie's uniform in season 1, and they had a very heartfelt conversation then too about Jackie. Like it wasn't just that; it was about the fact that this was used to mark somebody for sacrifice in a way. I understand. I understand completely why Shauna lost her mind and was like, "You want to kill my daughter." I get why that came off as a threat. Whether Lottie was trying to intend it as a threat is not really super relevant to me because I think she was out of line for doing that regardless, because I think even if you just meant it as like, I don't know, we see, for example, in the teen timeline right now where Nat's their leader, she's wearing it. So it's like a double-edged sword where like you're the leader, but you're also then marked for sacrifice later. I think they haven't started hunting again yet in the teen timeline, so we haven't seen yet that ritual. Like I wonder how many more, like so far the only hunt we've seen is Natalie's and we haven't seen another hunt since. So I wonder if they're going to do many or if it was just like that one established the rules and then the only other one they did was hit girl before they get rescued. I don't know, but obviously it has a lot of weight to it, not just because it's Jackie's necklace, but even if it was just Jackie's necklace and there was no double meaning, I think Lottie was out of line, and I completely understand Shauna's reaction to that. But yeah, that's how I feel about the Lottie, Callie, Shauna of it all. Moving on to Misty and Shauna, because they, in the adult timeline, are a big dynamic this episode as well. Misty's very much trying to, like, connect to Shauna. She, like, wants to hang out. Misty tries to, like, debrief to Shauna about what happened. And Shauna's really, like, not interested at all. She's like, why did you have to tell me this over like, a meal? And she's like, I thought we could hang out. And then Misty, like, invites herself to Shauna's errands that they're running. And the big scene for Misty and Shauna this episode is Shauna's brakes stop working. They're in the car. Her brakes stop working. She, like, drives into a park and ends up, like, the car stops. But, like, her car isn't working. Shauna gets really mad at Misty, tells her that something must have warped her as a child. Misty gets really upset too, storms off. And Shauna, something to note, Shauna is like, of course you were the one who you definitely you did the phone, you did this. Like, she's blaming Misty for the weird phone we saw in episode 2. I really, like, the thing is, I love Misty. It makes me sad for Misty because I'm like, they should have just been a little nicer to her. And I get it. Maybe it's like a little bit annoying, but it's like, how have they not realized at this point that, like, Misty just, like, wants to be part of them? I think it's also, like, it's hard though, because it's like, imagine how Misty feels that she so desperately, like, wants to be liked by them, and then you call her to watch Lottie. But then, like, yeah, and I guess she's kind of mad about the whole Misty falling asleep thing. But, like, I feel really bad for Misty because it's like she's always ready to drop everything and help the others, even if the way she's helping them is not, like, helpful at all and ends up being more destructive. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not saying that Misty does no wrong. But I really think Misty, everything she tries to do is just, like, for everybody's best interest. Like, that's genuinely the way she thinks she is behaving in the dynamic, is helping people, or at least she's showing up for people. There's one thing about Misty, she will show up, she will be there. And I think even her original fucked up action of breaking the black box, that was because that was the first time that they were talking about her in a positive way. They were like, we couldn't have been doing this without Misty because she was super good with the first aid and everything. So it's like a lot of Misty's bad actions are just like her trying to connect, her wanting community and friends in a similar way that Lottie does. Misty and Lottie just gotta link up. I don't know. It made me really sad because it's like a lot of things warped you as a child too, Shauna. Like, what do you mean? Okay, you, like, killed a man. Like, she lists all these things that Misty has done, and it's like, you killed a man. You started having an affair with somebody who, like, you got into a fender bender with. Then you killed him. Then Misty helped you, like bury that body. Without Misty, you'd be in prison. Misty's boyfriend, Walter, again, helped your husband not go to prison. Misty saved you a lot of the times. And, like, Shauna, you also are a very fucked up, traumatized person, as all of them are. It's a little silly to be like, something must have warped you as a child. A lot of things warped all of you. You went through them together. Anyways, that made me really sad for Misty. And I was happy that she was, like, stood up for herself and was like, you are not what I deserve. I like that. We see Misty, like, burn the picture of her, Shauna, Taissa, and Natalie at the reunion that we see in season 1. That made me really sad, I won't lie. But I am interested to see how this will change Misty's, like, if at all, like, how I'm interested in how we're gonna pick up after this. Like, is Misty still gonna go then anytime they need her? Is she actually going to, like, stand somewhat firm in this self-worth she's, like, trying to establish and not, like, go back to them as soon as they need her? I feel like she still will. Like, I think the thing about Misty is no matter how much they abandon her, she's still going to show up for them. So I don't think this is going to, like, I don't know. I am excited to see. She burned the photo, but, like, will this genuinely change their dynamic? That's what I'm excited to see. An interesting thing that I forgot to mention with Mari and Coach when they were having like their heartfelt conversation, when she was talking about her cousin dying, she said that she thinks that sometimes she thinks there are two realities and the bad one is just like waiting. And that was really, really interesting. And I think a very important sentence that I think may come back. In the teen timeline, we see like more of Melissa and Shauna. It's a very brief scene where Melissa kind of like goes up to Shauna and Shauna's like, you can stay, but then they find Mari, so that kind of ends really briefly. I'm excited to see where that goes. We'll see. I already went through them interrogating Mari. When they're getting ready to go with Mari to look for Coach Scott, we see briefly Lottie trying to get Akilah to connect to the wilderness. She's like, you feel it too. Akilah's not interested. I feel really bad for Akilah. I'm scared. I'm scared for Akilah. I'm scared how this is gonna pan out. I do not sense good things. I think bad things are going to happen to Akilah. And I'm scared for what may happen if she connects to the wilderness. I'm scared what will happen regardless. Like, even if she's always resistant, maybe what will happen is that Lottie will keep insisting, but Akilah won't. And the wilderness will somehow punish her. Like, maybe Akilah's downfall is not going to be connecting to the wilderness, but like refusing to. Maybe that'll be Akilah's downfall. Either way, I'm really, really, really scared for Akilah. Okay, another huge thing from this episode that I want to talk about is the man with no eyes that we saw in the commercial. So Van, like I said, is very into VHS things. Obviously, if you watch the show, you know. And they're watching like old VHS, which was so Joseph from Big Brother 26 coded. But anyways, they're watching old VHS tapes and they get like a commercial for this ice cream place, and we see the man with no eyes, his eyes like pop out, and like Van and Taissa starts freaking out. She's like, that's the guy for my vision. They find this ice cream place, they go to look for it, it's closed down. When they are there, they see though like a fox or a coyote eating a rabbit or something, I don't know, and they're like, what do you want? And they're like, it's hungry. I mean, yeah, it's a coyote. They're always kind of hungry. R.I.P. to that bunny though, but I'm kidding. I don't know how I feel about that. I like this being, the man with no eyes is obviously a really big question mark that a lot of people had, especially for the people who fall more in my camp who are like, I don't really want it to be supernatural. I want it to, my personal opinion is that I just want it to be unconfirmed. I think it's like wonderful that people can read into it and be like, it has to be supernatural. I personally don't want it confirmed one way or the other. And if it is supernatural in a kind of like, there are two realities way, I would like that better than like there's some kind of magical entity and like Lottie has powers. I don't really love that kind of like, oh, there's like a ghost or there's like a demon or like there's, you know, like that kind of thing I don't love. But like two realities and like a comment on reality and stuff like that, maybe like that I would be interested in. So the man with no eyes was always a question mark for me because I'm like, I feel like that has to be some kind of supernatural entity that I'm not really interested in. And I liked this kind of like, you can tie it back to some kind of human explanation. Like she saw this guy in a commercial and it like stuck with her that it became like a mythological being in a way of like something that was haunting her, but it was just a mascot from an ice cream commercial. I would love that. You know what's funny is I always see people being like, guys, the man with no eyes isn't even that scary. Like, if that freaks you out, like, you cannot handle horror. And it's like, okay, the thing is, it's not the scariest thing ever, but some of us are really sensitive to eye things. Like, sorry that Coraline traumatized me, and anything that has to do with, like, removing eyes in that capacity, like, makes me a little anxious. Like, he's not creepy in the, like, I see him and he freaks me out. He's creepy in the, like, eye thing. Especially the first time we see him, it's like Kai's grandma has a glass eye or something. Like, it's things like that. The eye thing, you know? Eyes are such a sensitive part of your face. Anyways, I really like that explanation. I'm excited to see. Also, something I love about Yellowjackets. Last season, it was like Lottie's compound. They had a phone number that if you called, you would get like messages. And like the messages changed when certain episodes came out. Like after the finale of the last episode, if you called the Sunshine, whatever number, it like you got like a message about how like they were closed or something. There's a phone number on the Aussie ice cream, whatever, and people have been calling it and you get like some kind of note. I love that Yellowjackets does that. I think that's such a fun way to interact with the fans. So I really like that. But I'm interested in that. I like kind of the explanation. We'll see more about Ty, Van, other Ty, the man with no eyes. There's a lot there. I'm excited to see where it continues, especially because I feel like there's a lot of implication that like people are going to start dying and they're going to like in the preview for the next episode, it was like Ty wants more time with Van and Van's like not like this. And it's kind of like implied that they're going to like, that Ty is full like a hardcore buying into the wilderness thing, which is interesting. I'm excited to see where that goes. So the episode ends with, they go to look for Coach Scott. And they're very much like angry mob, pitchforks kind of vibe. Like it really felt like, it was interesting to me because he was like, he described them as a mob, like as an angry mob when he was talking to Mari, like what that mob would think of me. And they very much, this episode, were kind of like an angry mob. They went to chase after him. They get to the cave and there's like a giant wall of rocks like blocking off the entrance to the cave. So they go separate ways and there's kind of like a bit of a dream sequence. Akila's involves her eating a bunch of berries. And at this point I was screaming, crying, throwing up because I was like, okay, if pomegranate theory is real, which if you don't know, there's like a consistent theme in Yellowjackets where if you eat something in like a dream sequence, it often points to you passing away. When Jackie dies, she drinks hot chocolate, she dies. Then we see Lottie in like a bit of a dream sequence when she passes out in season 2 when she's trying to like somehow hunt during that like competition with Natalie that I was saying that Mari pissed me off during because she was like, Lottie doesn't need a gun. Lottie will be fine. When she does that, she kind of like, we see her in kind of a bit of a dream sequence and she like goes to eat some Chinese food, but Laura Lee stops her and she doesn't die. So there's very much a like, if you eat something, consumption is a huge part of Yellowjackets. If you eat something, it's a bad sign. And so I was like, Akila's a goner. She gobbled up those berries. She's gonna die. I was so scared for Akila. I was so, like, at this point I was like, R.I.P. Akila. I already knew it was coming, but like every episode that passes by and Akila is alive, I'm like, I'm literally appreciating the moments I have with her because I don't feel like they're long for this world. And then Shauna's individual dream, because then they have like a joint dream, which I'll get into. Shauna's individual dream, she's in the lake and she sees a little boy in the shore and it's like implied that it's her son. She's waving, he's yelling mommy, I think. Maybe he doesn't yell mommy. Maybe I made that up. But she tries to swim towards him and she can't. She's stuck where she is and eventually she's pulled down. Genuinely devastating. Like I am tearing up thinking about it. The joy she had when she saw her son, I'm sick to my stomach. I'm sick to my stomach thinking about it. Like, I really have so much love in my heart for Shauna and everything that she went through. Because, like, that's such a heartbreaking... Like, they're all navigating individual trauma. And Shauna's is just a very specific one that none of the other ones are going... No one else is experiencing. That is so, like, unique and painful in a way that I can't imagine. Like, again, it's not a competition because everybody experiences... Their experience is unique to themselves. It's not a competition of like, you can't quantify pain in that way. But like what Shauna's going through is so difficult in a way that like my heart breaks for her. Van's vision, because it's Shauna, Van, and Akila have their own individual visions. Van is back in the cabin and she's watching the fireplace burn and then 3 hands like cover her mouth. Very creepy. And then they're in like a joint... They have kind of a joint vision where they're in a classroom. The man with no eyes walks by. Lottie is a teacher. First we see Jackie and they're kind of like, they're in a classroom. They're all wearing their Yellowjackets uniforms. Jackie's there. Lottie is the teacher in a really cute outfit. And in chalk written on the board behind Lottie is, of all the ways to lose a person, death is the kindest, which I felt was really important. I really liked this. There's like a snap bracelet that they each kind of take turns having, and it cuts Van. It leaves Akila unscathed, and then it like chokes Shauna to death. I mean, to death. They're in a dream. But then like, and it's rainbow, which I think is important. But that was really, really, like, I really like that. There's so much to unpack there that I don't even feel like I have all my thoughts yet. Like, I feel like I'll keep noticing things. But I have a love-hate relationship with those kind of scenes. I really liked this one and each individual one. Oh, I forgot to mention in Aquila's, there are like a bunch of animals and there's a talking llama. The llama freaked me out. I'm not going to lie. I forgot about the llama. The episode ends with they come to, they're in the cave, and then Coach Scott is like there, he's helping them. There's some kind of fumes, like gas that's like making them loopy. And then Natalie, the episode ends with Natalie's there. She's pointing a gun at Coach Scott and she's like, "You're coming with us." I'm excited to see where it goes. In the adult timeline, there's a lot of dynamics that there's a lot more to dive into, especially because we left off on like a bad note with a lot of people. Like Shauna and Lottie, there's a bit of tension there. There's tension between Misty and Shauna. Ty and Van are kind of in their own world. Like, I'm just interested to see how all the storylines go. I think Coach Scott, the next episode is like his trial, basically. I think he's going to be guilty and they're going to kill him. And I think killing Coach Scott will begin a more purposeful hunt. I said earlier that like up until this point, really the only times they've like killed people hasn't been like directly. I think they're going to like kill Coach Scott directly, and I think that'll be the beginning of them kind of hunting for sport more than just hunting for necessity. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Thank you so much for tuning in. I went on longer than I thought I was going to, so I'm not going to talk about The Bachelor just because I went on longer than I was going to. But maybe next week, if I have some more time, I'll talk about some thoughts I have in this season so far. All I'll say is justice for Carolina if you watch The Bachelor. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot. You'll hear from me sometime soon. Thank you so much. It means a lot. Have a great week.